was a defining event in David's life. He thought of and talked about Ronald all the time. In fact, on our first date, he told me what happened with Ronald, and while he was doing that, I had a feeling I'm going to marry this person. And it took a while, but we did. He was such a giving person, and he knew how much I missed my family when we lived in New Jersey, and he sacrificed a lot, I think, to move us down to Texas. We had a good life there, but I think part of him was always in New Jersey. And so now, literally, part of him will always be here, at rest with his family members, his mother and stepfather, and two others who, like David, died too soon, Ronald and, of course, Ashley. His family has suffered so much. I want to mention his brother Doug, who died this past year. He's also in our thoughts today. This is a very beautiful cemetery. David visited often. He brought the kids here. We came here whenever he was home. And so I know it'll be a good place for him to rest. And even though it's been almost 3 years since he died, it's still hard to say goodbye. He was a wonderful husband, father, brother, friend. He was endlessly optimistic, upbeat, and fun, and we miss him so much. His niece Lily, and I wanted to tell you guys that when Dave got sick, he wanted a picture of Lily and Penny up next to the bed, and he had a hard time seeing sort of at the end, but the picture was really big, so he could look at it. So she's going to do a reading for us.
This verse says, "What will heaven be like?" From the book of Revelation 21:4. God will be with them. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes. Death will be no more. Grief, crying, and pain will be no more, because the previous things have passed away.
Katie.
Hey, thank you guys so much for coming. It means so much that y'all are here. Just be patient with me. This is a hard one. So we all talk about, like when people talk about my dad, they always talk about like how tough he was, and, like, chin up, chest out, and like how hard of a worker he was. But I want to talk about what I admired the most about my dad, and that was how he showed his love with his actions. My dad was always showing people that he loved them in his way. When I was in college, I was often pretty sad and homesick, and I wanted to come back for the weekend a lot, which, and I was too anxious to make the 45-minute drive on my own at the time. And every time I asked my dad, he would drive me home and back. Every single time. He never said no once. He went to every single one of my plays and concerts. He went to all of Jack and Charlie's sports games when he wasn't already coaching. And when I watched home movies with me and him when I was a toddler, he'd always be hovering around, like chasing me around and making sure that I didn't fall down or hurt myself when I was playing. And everybody who knows me knows how much I love movies, and him and I would often go to the movies together. And often I would have some art film or like some silly drama that I wanted to see, and he would always go, "Sure." And he would never say, "That movie looks really weird, Katie." I remember when I roped him in to go see a Yorgos Lanthimos film, and he didn't complain at all. But a couple times in the theater, I saw him making this face. And even after that, whenever I suggested a movie, he never said, "Katie, you sure about this one?" I remember once my dad and I got into an argument when I was young, like maybe 9. And afterwards, he wrote, "I love you, kid. Love, Dad," on a little sticky note, just to reassure me that even though we had a fight, he still loved me. I put that on my bookshelf, and I kept it there for a few years, just so I could look at it sometimes when I needed it. My dad was always showing his love through his actions, and I think everybody here knows what I'm talking about. He would always, if you needed money, he'd lend you money. If you needed something fixed, he would help you fix it. And I never once doubted my dad loved me, even if he was yelling at me for driving over a curve during our driving lessons, or yelling at me for spending so much time at the library so that the pizza in the oven turned to charcoal when we got home. I remember that one. He apologized for that, though. Something my dad would always do when we were kids is he would say, "Guess what?" And we would say, "What?" Like, And as kids, because we were young, we would always say, Dad, we already know that, or Dad, you always say that every time. And then one time I asked him when I was a little older, Dad, why do you do that? Like, why do you do that? And he told me that when he was a kid, he didn't hear that often at home. And I realized that as an adult, my dad was making an active choice to make sure that his kids knew that he loved them. He never wanted us to feel unloved, not even for a second. You know, my dad was not someone who loved being emotional or expressing his feelings. And I think I saw him cry like twice in my entire life. It's something that I also struggle with. And, you know, I remember when my dad and I were coming home from the movies, another trip, and this was after he got sick. And he said, Katie, I'm scared. And one of my biggest regrets now is that we didn't have more intimate conversations together about how we felt and how that it's hard and how feeling and being vulnerable is really hard if you're like us. I think that maybe if he had lived longer, we would have had those conversations. But he didn't, so we didn't. My dad will never get to see me get my master's degree. He will never walk me down the aisle. And he'll never get to chase his grandchildren around the yard the way that he chased me. And those are experiences that have been stolen from us and from everyone who loved him. Honestly, the grieving has gotten easier over time, but that part never will get easier for me. When I got older, my dad stopped doing the guess what, I love you thing. I think it might have been a little embarrassing because we were adults, you know. But I didn't want it to die. I didn't want it to let it go. So I would tell him, I would say, guess what? And he'd say what? Every time, even though he knew what I was going to say. And I would say, I love you, Dad. And he would say, I love you too, kid, every time. And I kept it going till the end because things got really difficult for us both, and I really needed him to know how much I loved him. So, if you guys could just do me a favor, I just want to indulge myself one more time. Guess what, Dad? I love you. And I miss you, and I'll always love you. And thank you so much for everything.
Thanks, Katie. I just have a really short memory that I'll talk about. Of course, I think about him every day. So many things to remember, cherish, memories that will remain forever among my most beloved possessions. But perhaps above all, remember the wonderful, singular look that he had in his eyes when he looked at you. To me, there was a glint in his eyes, as if he'd lived a dozen lifetimes. This unique presence, so foreign and layered. He had in him such great depths of sorrow, of sadness, but also such incredible peaks of joy and triumph and happiness. Always there, looking back at you, were these magnificent beacons of understanding, of rich humanity. Someone who had lived a life so different than mine would ever be, but who seemed to know me so deeply. That was his ability to connect with others on such a profound, personal level. He understood what it was and what it meant to be a person. And he used that knowledge to live a rich and full life. By loving and caring and enjoying life with others above all else. That's the thing I'll always remember when I think about that look in his eyes. That was Dad.
Read a poem for us.
Gone from My Sight by Henry Van Dyke. What is dying? I am standing on the seashore. A ship sails in the morning breeze and starts for the ocean. She is an object of beauty, and I stand watching her till at last she fades on the horizon, and someone at my side says, "She's gone." Gone where? Gone from my sight, that is all. She is just as large in the mast, hull, and spars as she was when I saw her, and just as able to bear her load of living freight to its destination. The diminished size and total loss of sight is in me, not in her. And just at the moment when someone at my side says she is gone, there are others who are watching her coming, and other voices take up a glad shout. There she comes, and that is dying.
I like that poem because I think a lot about David's gone from us. But think of all the